guys, I'm Sarah with Rusty Dog & Co. and welcome back for another video in this kitchen remodel series. Now in the last video, I tackled building all of the shaker style cabinet doors for these kitchen cabinets. And so that means in this video, we're gonna be tackling building all of the drawer boxes for these kitchen cabinets. And there are a lot of them, so let's get started. Alright, so the first step for these drawer boxes involves breaking down a couple sheets of plywood. Now you can always choose to make your drawer boxes out of solid wood, but for simplicity's sake, I'll just be using some 1/2-inch plywood that is pre-finished on both sides. This is nice because it means that I don't have to finish the box once it's all assembled, which if you've ever had to do that before, then you know how difficult it can be to do that and not end up with drips everywhere. Next, I'm going to switch out the blade on my table saw from a ripping blade to a fine finish blade. Now, if I don't do this, then I'll end up getting a ton of tear out with that pre-finished veneer. The fine finish blade prevents nearly all of that. Next, I start cutting all of my drawer box parts to size. Now, I'll explain how I figure out the measurements for these parts in just a bit. Alright guys, so I've been working on the parts and pieces for these drawer boxes. I've got all of my side pieces cut out now. I've got them cut to the proper height that I need for each drawer box and the depth as well. Now, these dimensions are pretty simple to figure out. That's why I went ahead and started with the side pieces. As far as the height goes, what I like to do is I take whatever my cabinet opening is or my face frame opening, whatever clearance that you have there that you need that drawer box to slide in and out from, then I take that dimension and I just subtract 1 inch from that. I like to give myself as much clearance as possible, so I just chop 1 inch off of that measurement, and that usually leaves me with a pretty good sized drawer box that I don't have any clearance issues with it hitting or snagging on anything. As far as the depth of my drawer box, this one is also pretty simple because whatever slides that you're using, so I'm using these Undermount drawer slides here, these are 21 inches from front to back. Pretty simple way to figure out the depth of my drawer box is I just make it whatever size drawer slide that I got. So 21-inch drawer slides, these pieces are going to be cut to 21 inches long. So that's what I did for all of my side pieces. Those are the pieces that I say side, pretty self-explanatory, but just to visually show you guys, those are just going to be the pieces that are on each side of my drawer box. Now I need to figure out what size these pieces on the front and the back need to be. These are a little bit trickier because you have to do some math, and depending on the types of drawer slides that you're using, you might have to figure out a few more things dependent on the drawer slides. So for the front and back pieces, here's a sample front and back piece here. So obviously my height is going to be exactly the same as my side pieces because I want my drawer box to be even on each side. So whatever your opposing side pieces are, I'm gonna cut my front and back piece to that same height. That one's pretty easy to figure out. The one that can be a little trickier to figure out is what length you need these pieces to be. In my case, I'm using these Undermount drawer slides, so these can be a little bit more tricky to figure out at first, but I promise you, once you figure it out and once you figure out how to do this, these drawer slides tend to be the easiest to kind of put together once you figure it out. I like using these. I feel like they function the best, and like I said, once you kind of get the system down, they're really not any harder than other drawers. But I understand it took me several tries to get to the point where I was comfortable with using these. But anyways, in my particular example though, I'll just kind of show you what I'm dealing with to get these figured out. These drawer slides, they actually did not come with any sort of instructions. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. I've had several that have come with instructions when I've bought them, and then I've had several that have not. If the package does not have any sort of instructions or technical sheet in there, oftentimes you can just go online and find that. And that's what I did for these particular drawer slides. I'll put up on the screen what this sort of technical sheet looks like so you guys have some sort of idea what I'm talking about. But this will give you an idea of what measurements you need to figure out as far as like what the total width of your drawer box needs to be to accommodate these size slides. In my particular case, these drawer slides will not work with any plywood that is thicker than 5/8 of an inch. So this is 1/2 inch plywood. So you just want to make sure that you look at that technical sheet so you're making sure you're using the right type of material. You also want to make sure that your dimensions are correct. So on that technical sheet, there is a formula that will show you how you figure out what length to cut these front and back pieces to. So how I made this a little bit easier on myself is I just took that formula from that technical sheet. I went to ChatGPT and I asked them for help in making a formula where I could just input all of my opening heights, and it could help me figure out what these dimensions are going to be based on that formula on that technical sheet. I always like to leave a little bit of wiggle room too, because in my experience, if you cut everything to the exact size, sometimes that can cause the drawer box to rack a little bit on the drawer slide. So I like to take just a hair off. That way I'm a little undersized, there's plenty of room there so nothing is catching or racking on that drawer slide. I put together a little spreadsheet here that gives me all of my dimensions that I need. One of the things about most of these technical sheets that are going to come with these undermount drawer slides is that a lot of those formulas and dimensions that they're giving you on there are in metric. And if you happen to live in the US, then you probably don't deal in metric very much. For me, that was always a little bit complicated trying to do all these conversions in my head. Let something like ChatGPT be your friend. It basically took all of those metric measurements and converted them to inches. That can be really helpful if you have a nice even number, but a lot of the times it's not going to be something super simple. So it might be like 24, 30 seconds or something that's really hard to measure out. That's where dealing in metric is a little bit easier. So if you think you're going to be installing some of these undermount drawer slides frequently, then I would highly recommend to go out and get you some sort of metric tape measure. I picked up this one here. It actually has both the centimeters, millimeters, and inches on it as well. I use this tape measure specifically for when I'm putting drawer boxes together with these undermount drawer slides. So in my particular case, I've got a front and back piece here that I know I need to cut to 605 millimeters. That is 23.8188976377953 inches. So in this particular case, it is going to be so much easier to measure this out using millimeters instead of inches. So for 605 millimeters, what I do is I take my little tape measure here. So on my tape measure, we've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Those are centimeters. So for 605 millimeters, I want to go to the 60 centimeter mark because I know that is 600 millimeters. I want to count over 5 millimeters. Those are the small marks here. So go to 60 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is right here. That is 605 millimeters. A lot easier to measure out that way than trying to measure it out in inches. Now I can cut this piece and the back piece to the 605 millimeters, and that should give me the exact size drawer box that I need. After getting all my drawer box parts cut to size, it was time to cut the grooves in each piece for my bottom panel. Now this bottom panel needs to sit up a ½ inch from the bottom of the box. So I just used my setup blocks to set my table saw accordingly. And then I run each piece through the table saw a couple of times until I get the exact size groove that I need for these bottom panels. The next step is optional, but I decided to add some edge banding to the top edge of all of the parts for my drawer box, just so that they look a little bit more like solid wood. Now this edge banding has some glue on the back side that adheres to things once heat is applied. So I just take my iron and I run it over my edge, making sure I've got good adhesion. Once enough heat is applied, I take this little rolling tool and I roll it over the edge, applying pressure and making sure that the edge banding is good and attached. Once I feel like it's stuck on there good, I leave it alone to dry for about 10 to 15 minutes. Once it's dry, I cut off the excess on the ends with some of these flush cut snips. Then I work on getting the edge banding flush with this dual-sided edge band trimmer. And finally, I take this little chamfer block plane and I add a small chamfer to each side. This really smooths out the edge banding and gives everything a really integrated look. Next, I went ahead and got all of my bottom panels cut to size. Now I'm using a 1/4 inch pre-finished plywood for these bottom panels. I'm going to be joining these boxes together with nails and pocket hole screws. So I had to cut some pocket holes in all of my front and back pieces for the drawer boxes. All right, guys, I've got all the parts and pieces cut for these drawer boxes now, and now it's time to start getting them assembled. Now, this is where I had to take a second and kind of think about how I wanted to do this. Now, normally when I put drawer boxes together, I just take all my parts and pieces, I form my box, I put a little glue on the edges, I usually will sink some brad nails in, and then attach my screws. However, I can't do that this time because, as I've mentioned before, this is pre-finished plywood. And this is actually pre-finished on both sides. So that means that glue, it's not gonna work with this stuff. And so I had to try to think about how I wanted to join this together so that that drawer box is still going to be strong. I originally thought, okay, maybe what I'll do is I'll just take my sander and I will sand off the edges here where I want to apply some glue. That'll take off that finish and then I can apply that glue and it should be able to stick. But honestly, that felt like a lot of work that I did not want to do. Plus, it was going to be really hard to get it perfect, so that I made sure that I wasn't sanding off any of the finish on the parts that would be seen. So really, that felt like that was not going to be an option for me. So I had to do a little bit of research and figure out what was going to be the best way to join these drawer boxes together. And I found a couple of videos from professional cabinet builders online, and it seems like they forego the wood glue when they use this pre-finished type of material, and the drawer box seems to be just fine. They typically use brad nails in combination with pocket hole screws, and they said they've been doing it like this for 10 to 20 years and have yet to have a drawer box fail on them. So I'm gonna take that as a good sign that we don't need the wood glue. Obviously, if you can add wood glue to something like this, then that's just going to add extra strength, but these drawer boxes should hold up just fine without it. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna take all my parts and pieces, I'm gonna form up my box, then I'm gonna take my brad nailer with some 1-inch brad nails, and I will sink in some brad nails and kind of just hold that box together. That'll keep things from shifting around on me while I'm trying to attach my pocket hole screws. Once I've got sort of my box held together, then I'll go in and I'll add some pocket hole screws. As you can see, I've gone ahead and cut some pocket holes into the backs of my front piece as well as my back piece. And that's the screws that are sort of gonna hold everything together. All right, so I've got about 11 drawer boxes to put together. This is gonna take me a little while, so I'm gonna throw some music on and we're gonna get through this. All right, let's go. Oh, one quick thing that I should mention, before you get started on doing anything like this, make sure that your surface that you're building these off of is level. So I went ahead and made sure that my little table area I'm working on here is level. That's important because if you were going to sit these things on here and you want to keep everything flush and even, it's just a little bit easier if you're working off of a level surface. Also, another thing is make sure all your grooves are facing the wrong way. Trust me, I have messed this up more than once, so just make sure everything is aligned like it's supposed to be. These are these little corner clamps that I've used before. I really like these things, and so I'm gonna be using them here. Basically, you just stick them on the corner here, you get kind of everything lined up. And so these actually do two things. First, they give you a 90-degree corner here, which is obviously very important when it comes to a drawer box. Another thing that it does is it's sitting on both of these pieces here. If you have it pressed all the way down, it makes sure that everything is going to be flush and even on the top. That's really important for drawer boxes as well. And actually, one other thing that it does is it just kind of holds everything together while I can go in and brad nail everything together without having to have some big clamp on here. Obviously, it leaves this area open as well so that I can get my nail gun in there to attach those nails. So those are some of the things that I'm going to be using to put this drawer box together that are just helps me out a little bit. All right, music's going back on. Okay, now that I've got those brad nails in the front of my drawer box, now it's time to attach my pocket hole screws into these pocket holes that I drilled out here. Now, I'm gonna be using 3/4 inch, I think these are number 7 pocket hole screws. These are fine thread for like things like hardwoods. I found that these work a little bit better when I'm using this 1/2 inch plywood. Even though this says it's 1/2 inch, it's a little bit under that. So I've found personally that when I use 1 inch screws, which is what they typically recommend for 1/2 inch plywood, they always seem to poke through the sides. So that's why I'm using 3/4 inch screws here. I've adjusted the size of my holes a little bit so that these fit a little bit better. So if you're using this 1/2 inch stuff, you might just have to tweak the settings a little bit on your pocket hole jigs just to make sure you're getting the best fit possible. And then the other thing is I set my drill setting. I've got it set to 6 here. You don't want to overdrive these screws in, especially with this really thin plywood here. This veneer can kind of pop out and your screw can kind of blow through. So you just want to make sure you're taking it nice and easy when you are working with this type of stuff. All right, just a few little tidbits I thought might be helpful for you. I don't know why I put these headphones on because I'm taking them off every few. Always. That always happens to me and always scares me every single time. You think I would learn, but I don't. Anyways, what I wanted to tell you is that I did the back a little bit different than the front. On that front piece, you saw that I had that groove for my plywood bottom panel to sit in. And what I did on this back piece is I just ripped that groove off. So now what that means is I can just sit my back piece directly on my bottom panel and then get that attached. The reason I do it that way is because if you attach it with that groove, with the groove in place and then put your bottom panel in there, then if something was to ever happen to this bottom panel, it would be a pain in the butt to try to replace this bottom panel. This way, if you ever want to replace your bottom panel, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get it attached with those pocket hole screws. I'm going to put a countersink a couple screws into the bottom of my bottom panel that will attach into this. Then you would just have to take those screws out. You could remove this piece and then you could just slide your bottom panel out, pop a new one in, and you're back in business. Sarah from the future here. I just wanted to let you guys know that I don't know what that whole thing about removing this back piece was for this bottom panel, because as I was thinking about it, you don't even need to remove this back panel to take the bottom panel out. Once these screws that are attached here are taken out, then this should just be able to slide out freely because I didn't use any wood glue or anything. Might have to shimmy it a little bit. Oh, come on now. As you can see, that came right out with this back piece still in place. So I don't know what I was thinking. I could have edited all of this out so I wouldn't look like such an idiot, but I wanted to show you guys that sometimes it's possible to overthink things in the middle of a project, and that's exactly what happened here. That's what I was trying to say. Sometimes I don't always get it right on the first try, but I try. The other thing is with those undermount drawer slides, that technical sheet will tell you that they need to be a 1/2 inch up from the bottom because your drawer box is basically going to sit on top of those slides. And it'll tell you to kind of notch out a little section that can sit over the slides, but what I do is I just cut the whole back off. It's a lot easier that way. You don't have to cut and notch every little section. That takes way longer. You don't really need this section in the middle for anything, so I just chop it all off. So that's why this one is basically shorter than that front piece. One other advantage of adding those brad nails from the side is because when you're pulling a drawer out, you would be constantly pulling against those screws since I put them in from the side. If you would nail something this way when you're pulling with it, there's a likelihood that you could pull that brad nail out with it. But because I'm coming in from the side and they're constantly like pulling against that, it should keep these drawer boxes together very well. Got us a drawer box together. What do you guys think? Looks pretty good to me. Now, this is just the quickest way that I could put this drawer box together. On the last kitchen that I did the whole dovetail joinery thing. The drawer boxes, I'll admit, they looked awesome. That dovetail joinery does look really cool. I had that little jig that I got from Harbor Freight. I used my router, but I will be honest, that took me so long to do all of the drawer boxes. And so for this kitchen, I just decided that the amount of time that would take would not be worth it. So we just went with this very simple method for joinery here. I do have a couple little brad nail holes there that I will probably fill with something so they blend in a little bit better. But all in all, we've got us a nice solid drawer box, and I'm pretty proud of this thing. Let's keep going. So hard to put on gloves again once you've taken them off, and they get a little bit of moisture in there, and then the fingers get all like, I get so frustrated with it. Like, I don't want to waste this glove, but golly day. Whew, patience, patience, patience. All right, we're good. All right, guys, so I've got all of my drawer boxes assembled now. What I'm working on now, as you can see, is I want to touch up this edge banding that I applied to the tops of my drawer boxes. Now, this pre-finished plywood is birch, so I made sure that I used birch edge banding for all of my tops here. However, it's not exactly a perfect match because this is pre-finished. This is also kind of like pre-finished or UV finished, but it's a little bit lighter in color than the rest of the drawer box. So I decided that what I'm gonna do, I saw this little trick online. I'm gonna take some bug spit here. Did you guys know that this is actually like bug spit? I found that out recently. This is shellac, and basically what I'm gonna do is, this is the amber color, and I'm just gonna take a little bit on my brush here, and I'm gonna apply it just to the tops here of my edge banding. And what that's gonna do is it's just gonna get a little bit closer of a match to the rest of the drawer box. I'll probably apply a little on here, and then I'll take like a little rag and wipe off the finish so that it's not too saturated with color. But this is just going to get me a little bit closer to the color of the plywood. Not a necessary step, but I want these drawer boxes to look like they all are the same thing, even though they're not. They're a bunch of different things, but illusion is our friend in woodworking. It's also nice because it'll add a little bit of extra protection on this edge banding as well. I'm kind of undecided on this. I'm not sure if the amber is a little bit too dark, so I'm only gonna do these two drawers, and then I'm gonna get some of the clear shellac and see if that's a little bit closer of a match. It also could be just because it's wet right now. We'll come back at it tomorrow once it's dried and see what it looks like, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, I went out and I picked up more of this Beetlejuice. This time I went with the clear option. Also, why can I not find this stuff in sizes smaller than this? I really only need a little bit, but I'm like $50 into this shellac now, and I really don't even use it that much. I'm gonna have to find some other projects that I can use this stuff on so it doesn't go to waste. We're gonna try this clear out and see if it darkens this up just a tad. The more I look at those other ones I did with that amber, it's a little bit too dark for my liking. So if this doesn't work, then I'm probably just gonna leave them alone and leave them as they are, and I will have just wasted $50. All right, let's give this a try though. I really haven't used shellac much in the shop, and I think the main reason for it is that I just find that to build up that coating durability that you need, you just have to add a bunch of coats. One of the benefits of it is that it does dry really fast, so that is nice if you have to build up several coats of this stuff. I tend to lean towards finishes that either only take one coating or I can get by with just like 2 or 3 coats. I feel good about this one, guys. I don't know why. Could be false hope, but I feel like this is going to be the one. Also, I went to several different stores and the only size I could find of this shellac was in this really big quart size. There's bound to be smaller sizes of this. I mean, they make smaller size stains. They even make the smaller size, pint size, like polyurethanes. So I can't imagine that you wouldn't be able to find this stuff in a pint size, but I could be wrong. Okay, well, clear is obviously the clear winner. It darkened it up just enough to kind of match the finish on the rest of the drawer box. So I'm just gonna go around and apply this to all of the tops of my edge banding, and I think this will give me a pretty solid match. If only I would have just bought the clear to start with, I could have saved myself quite a bit of money, but don't worry, I'll find some use for this in the shop somehow. If I start finishing everything in shellac, you'll know why. All right, guys, these drawer boxes are really starting to come together, but we got a few more steps that we need to take care of before these things are done. Next up, I wanna take care of installing the clips that go with my undermount drawer slides. All undermount drawer slides that you're gonna get are gonna come with some of these clips here that are gonna go into the corners of the front underside of your drawer box. So they'll just sit in like that, and these just work with the drawer slides to allow it to soft close. Now, depending on the types of undermount drawer slides that you get, they'll have different adjustments on here. Some of them, like I've used some of the Bloom undermount drawer slides, they seem to have a lot of different adjustments for things like height, and just so that you can really dial in your drawer box. This doesn't have quite as many adjustments on it. That will also save you a little bit of money. Obviously, if you go with something like the Bloom or some of these that have like a ton of different adjustments, then they're gonna be a little bit pricier. There are different cheaper undermount drawer slide options out on the market as well. They all kind of get the job done. It's just a varying degree of how well they perform. So just kind of have to figure out what you want to spend. If you want to spend in the highest quality, then Bloom might be a good option. Now, installing these clips is pretty simple, and there are a couple different jigs out on the market that can help you with this process. This is the Jig It tool. This is for, I know this works with the Bloom undermount drawer slides. This is from Rockler. It's just a little jig tool here that you can set up against the front of your cabinet, and on the back here, it's got some holes that are angled the proper angles so that you can just drill into those holes. It comes with a little drill bit with a depth stop collar, so you make sure you're not drilling too far. And so this is really nice repeatability. You can just do it for each side quickly. It also has a section on the back here that's labeled left and right. So if I'm doing my right side here, I can put that up against that, and it'll perfectly line up with where I need to drill this hole on the back here, which I'll show you what that is for in just a second. This is a really nice tool, but unfortunately it does not work with these clips that I'm using right here, so I won't be able to use this. There might be some other types of jigs or tools out there that will work with some of these different types, different brands of drawer slides, but unfortunately this one won't be working for me today, so I won't be using it. But if you happen to use Bloom drawer slides, then this is a great tool I would invest in, especially if you do this on a pretty frequent basis. This has more than paid for itself. Since we can't be using that today, we are very simply just going to mark and drill out our holes manually, which is really not that hard to do. Let me bring the camera in closer so you can kind of see what we're working with. Okay, the way these little clips work is on the back here, I don't know if you can see it, but this one has an L here, and that tells me that this is going into my front left corner. Opposing one has an R on it, and that will go into my right corner. And they'll just sit at the front underside of your drawer box into the little corners here. Now, there's 3 important holes on these little clips. So on these, I've got 1, 2 in the front, and then 1 on the side. And so I want to drill out 3 holes and attach my screws into those holes. You want to make sure that the bottom of this is sitting flush to the bottom of your drawer box. You just want to make sure that everything is sitting as closely in this corner as you can get it. If you're going to have any sort of issues with your drawer slides, typically it's going to be because this little clip piece was not screwed in here properly. It might be just off a little bit. Any little sort of variation there can kind of mess up with the alignment of your drawer slide. So you want to try to get these seated in these corners as best as you can. Now I'm going to flip this around this way just so it's a little closer to me. I'm going to just throw a clamp on here so it's not moving around on me. So now that I've got these sitting in the front corner of my drawer box, I'm going to just hold it down firmly, and I'm going to take this little punch here, and I'm going to come in at an angle. It's kind of showing me, and I'm going to make a hole. for those 3 spots. Okay. Creating this little punch hole there will just give somewhere for my drill bit to start so that I'm getting as close to the proper alignment as I can. This little drill bit here came with the jig it tool, but if you don't have that, just take a small drill bit. You don't want to make too big of a hole here. You want to leave yourself enough meat there that you can thread your screw into. If you don't have a depth stop collar, you can easily just put some painter's tape on there so you make sure you're not drilling into your plywood or your box too far. And I'm just going to hold this tightly while I drill that out. Do the same thing. Blow out all that dust. That way I'm making sure this can still sit flush on there. It'll come with our screws here. And I just like to screw these in by hand. And so see here, it's kind of pulling it up once I put that first screw in. So you just want to make sure that when you put this one in, you're pressing it down. I just like to kind of hold it down. I'll get that other screw in. Now we're just gonna do that same thing for this side. Okay, now our clips are installed and we can move on to adding our little holes in the back here. Now, if you take a look at the Undermount drawer slides, there's gonna be like this little pin piece in the back. And what that does is once you drill out a little hole, this little pin piece will slot into that hole and it kind of just holds the drawer box in place. That way, if you were to like lean on the front of it or something, the whole drawer box wouldn't just tip over. This kind of locks everything in place. So we need to drill out a hole for this little pin piece to slide into on the back of our drawer box. So how I like to do this is I just sit my drawer slides on the drawer box, kind of like they would be. These little tab pieces on your clips here, this is how you would release the drawer box off of the slide. So as you can see it as I'm pressing that, it's allowing this to go in and out. I just get that in there kind of like it should be, and these little pin pieces will fall where they do on the back of the drawer box. And so what I do then is I just take a little mallet here, give it a good little whack, a little whack-a-doodle. Okay. And so what that did is it just created a little indentation on the back of my drawer box, and that'll tell me exactly where I need to drill out my hole. This wackadoodle method has always worked out pretty good for me, but every now and then there might be one hole that's slightly off, and I just fix it during the install. But if you want to make sure that these holes are exact, then your technical sheet will usually tell you exactly where you need to drill these holes. Then you can just measure, mark, and drill accordingly. So that little jig it tool is also helpful because it comes with another little drill bit and depth stop collar for drilling out these holes on the back. Again, if you don't have this tool, just get the proper size drill bit to make sure that pin will go fully in. Use a little bit of painter's tape because you don't want to blow through the back of your drawer box. Now that I have my little indentions in place, I'm going to drill a little hole, not all the way through the back of my drawer, so that little pin can slide right in and lock it in place. There's my little mark there. So there's our little holes. That slots right in. All right, so now those pins are gonna go into those holes that I drilled. That's gonna just make sure everything is locked into place. So now we've got nice soft close function for this drawer box. So now all I would have to do is get this part installed into my cabinet. So I'm just gonna go along and add these clips to the underside of all of my drawer boxes, and then we'll be ready to go ahead and get the rest of the drawer slide installed into that cabinet. And that's a wrap on those drawer boxes. I'm really happy with the way those turned out, solid, smooth, and ready to move into the kitchen. This step took a lot of measuring and fine tuning, but having all of the drawer boxes built means we're ready to move on to the fun part, installation. Next up, I'm taking all those cabinets, those cabinet doors, the drawer boxes, the face frames, all the things you've seen me build in the last couple of videos, and we're getting those installed in the kitchen, and we're gonna see how everything sort of fits together and how it really brings that space to life. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow along, because in the next episode, these cabinets are getting installed and you don't want to miss that transformation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back here for the next one.